The FBI command center had been transformed into a war room within hours of Sarah's intelligence breakthrough. Multiple screens displayed surveillance footage, building schematics, and real-time tracking data as teams of agents worked around the clock to prevent the impending attack on the Federal Justice Center. Agent Hayes stood at the center of the controlled chaos, coordinating multiple operations simultaneously. "Susan Chen has been under surveillance for the past 8 hours," she announced to the assembled task force. She returned to the Justice Center yesterday evening and has been working overnight, supposedly on routine security updates. Sarah studied the surveillance photos spread across the conference table. The images showed Chen entering various secure areas of the Justice Center, areas that would be perfect for placing explosive devices. "She has access to everything," Sarah observed. "Ventilation systems, electrical panels, even the courtroom levels where the terrorism trial is taking place." Agent Carter from the Tactical Division leaned forward. "We've identified the 2 other individuals from the parking garage meeting. James Wong, a private security contractor who works for the Justice Center's external security firm. And Maria Vasquez, who manages the building's maintenance scheduling system." The scope of the infiltration was staggering. The terrorists hadn't just recruited one inside contact, they had assembled a network of people with complementary access to different aspects of the building's operations. "What's our timeline?" Hayes asked. Agent Martinez consulted his analysis reports. "Based on the countdown timer Agent Mitchell observed and, cross-referencing with the trial schedule, we believe the attack is planned for tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m., exactly when the high-profile terrorism trial begins." That gave them less than 14 hours to identify all the explosive devices, neutralize the terrorist cell, and ensure the safety of everyone in the Justice Center. The building typically housed over 800 people on any given day, including judges, attorneys, defendants, court staff, and civilians attending various proceedings. Sarah had been studying the building plans for hours, trying to think like Rahman and his team. "If I were planning this attack, I'd want multiple redundancies," she said. "Explosives in different locations, triggered by different methods, to ensure the mission succeeds even if some devices are discovered." Hayes nodded grimly. "We're working under the assumption that there are multiple devices already in place. The question is whether we try to find and disarm them, or whether we evacuate the entire building and cancel all proceedings. Evacuation would save lives, but it would also let the terrorists escape," Sarah pointed out. "Plus, if we're wrong about the timing, they could just reschedule for a later date when security is relaxed again." Agent Torres, who had been monitoring communications intercepts, looked up from his station. "We're getting chatter from the listening device we placed in Rahman's original hotel room. Someone went back there, and they're talking about schedule adjustments." The team gathered around Torres's workstation to listen to the audio feed. The quality was poor, but they could make out voices speaking in a mixture of Arabic and English. "Change to backup timing, security too heavy tomorrow morning. Chen says evening shift has fewer guards. Move to secondary target if necessary." Sarah felt her pulse quicken. They're adapting their plan. If they think security is too heavy for the morning trial, they might be switching to an evening attack when the building is less secure. Hayes immediately began issuing orders. "I want complete surveillance on Chen, Wong, and Vasquez starting immediately. If they're moving to a backup plan, we need to know what it is." But Sarah was thinking beyond the immediate tactical response. "We need to consider using me again," she said. "My cleaning lady cover could still work. If they've moved to a new location, I might be able to infiltrate their operations." The room fell quiet as everyone considered the risks. Sarah had already been exposed to potential discovery during her hotel surveillance. Using her again would be extremely dangerous, especially now that the terrorists were clearly paranoid about security. "It's too risky," Agent Carter objected. "If they identify you as law enforcement, it would compromise the entire operation." But Sarah had already begun formulating a plan. "Not law enforcement. What if I approached them as a potential recruit?" The suggestion was so audacious that it took several seconds for its implications to sink in. Hayes stared at Sarah with a mixture of admiration and concern. You want to go undercover as someone willing to help terrorists attack a federal building? Sarah nodded. Think about it. They've been recruiting inside contacts for months. They're clearly looking for people with access to secure areas. What if Maria Santos, the cleaning lady, approached them offering to help? Agent Martinez began pulling up background files on his computer. We could create a backstory. Financial problems, family members in trouble with immigration, resentment toward the government. Give her motivation to turn against the system. The plan was risky beyond measure, but it also offered the possibility of getting inside the terrorist operation at the most critical moment. If Sarah could convince Rahman that she was willing to help, she might be able to learn the details of their backup plan and even sabotage it from within. Hayes was quiet for a long moment, weighing the risks against the potential benefits. The window for this kind of operation is incredibly narrow. If they suspect you're law enforcement, you could be killed before we could extract you. Sarah had already made her decision. It's our best chance to stop them. And if we don't try, hundreds of people could die tomorrow. Over the next 4 hours, the team worked to create an elaborate backstory for Maria Santos's transformation from invisible cleaning lady to potential terrorist accomplice. They fabricated financial records showing mounting debt and medical bills, created fake documentation of immigration problems affecting her family, and even planted false information suggesting she had been passed over for promotions due to discrimination. Meanwhile, surveillance teams confirmed that Rahman and his cell had moved to a safe house in an industrial area outside the city. The location was perfect for their purposes, isolated enough to avoid detection, but close enough to the Justice Center for quick deployment. Sarah spent the evening memorizing every detail of her new cover story and practicing the bitter, resentful attitude of someone who felt betrayed by the system she had served faithfully for years. The transformation was psychological as much as physical. She had to convince herself of her own fictional grievances to make them believable to trained terrorists. At 11 p.m., Sarah drove to a 24-hour diner near the industrial district where Rahman's safe house was located. She had changed back into her cleaning lady disguise, but this time she looked tired and desperate rather than simply invisible. Her clothes were wrinkled, her hair unkempt, and she carried herself with the defeated posture of someone who had run out of options. The diner was nearly empty except for a few late-night truckers and shift workers. Sarah ordered coffee and positioned herself at a corner booth where she could watch the entrance while appearing to be lost in her own troubles. She didn't have to wait long. At 11:47 p.m., one of Rahman's bodyguards entered the diner and ordered food to go. Sarah recognized him immediately from her hotel surveillance, but she forced herself to remain calm and maintain her dejected appearance. As the man waited for his order, Sarah made her move. She approached him hesitantly, as if struggling with a difficult decision. "Excuse me," she said quietly, "I think you stayed at the hotel where I work." "The Grand View?" The bodyguard looked at her suspiciously, his hand instinctively moving toward his concealed weapon. "I do not know what you are talking about." Sarah pressed forward with her rehearsed story. "I was the cleaning lady on your floor. You probably don't remember me. Nobody ever notices the cleaning lady." She paused, as if gathering courage. "I heard you and your friends talking about fighting back against the system." The man's expression became even more guarded. "You are mistaken. We are businessmen." But Sarah could see interest flickering in his eyes. The idea of recruiting hotel staff would appeal to terrorists looking for inside access to buildings and security information. "I know what I heard," Sarah continued, letting desperation creep into her voice. "And I know you're right. They treat people like me like we're invisible, like we don't matter. But I have access to places, information. I could help." The bodyguard studied her for a long moment. Sarah could see him evaluating whether she represented an opportunity or a threat. Finally, he seemed to reach a decision. "Stay here," he ordered. "Do not move. I will return." Sarah's heart pounded as she returned to her booth. She had successfully made contact, but the real test would come when Rahman himself arrived to evaluate her offer. If he suspected she was law enforcement, her life would be in immediate danger. 20 minutes later, the diner door opened again, and Rahman entered with both of his bodyguards. They walked directly to Sarah's booth, their expressions cold and calculating. Rahman slid into the seat across from her while his men positioned themselves to block any escape routes. "I understand you have something you want to discuss," he said in his cultured, professor-like voice. Sarah forced herself to meet his gaze despite the fear coursing through her veins. "I want to help you hurt them the way they've hurt me." For the next hour, Sarah spun an elaborate tale of personal grievances and financial desperation. She spoke about working multiple jobs just to pay for her mother's cancer treatments, about being passed over for promotions because of her accent, about watching wealthy hotel guests treat her like furniture while she struggled to survive. Rahman listened intently, occasionally asking probing questions designed to test the consistency of her story. Sarah answered each one based on the careful backstory the FBI team had created, but she also drew on real experiences she had observed during her years of undercover work. "And what exactly do you think you could do to help us?" Rahman asked finally. Sarah leaned forward conspiratorially. "I clean office buildings all over the city. I have keys, access codes, schedules. I know which buildings have real security and which ones just have cameras that don't work. I know when buildings are empty and when they're full of people." She paused for effect. "And I know you're planning something at the Justice Center." "I've cleaned that building too." Rahman's expression didn't change, but Sarah caught a slight tightening around his eyes. "What makes you think we are interested in any particular building?" "Because I saw the blueprints in your hotel room when I was cleaning," Sarah replied. "And because I know that building better than almost anyone. I've been cleaning it once a week for 3 years." This was the most dangerous moment of the entire operation. Sarah was claiming knowledge that could only have come from being inside Rahman's hotel room, which would raise immediate questions about how a simple cleaning lady had gained that access. Rahman stared at her for what felt like an eternity. "You were in our room without permission?" Sarah nodded, trying to project the defiant attitude of someone who had nothing left to lose. "I was supposed to be cleaning, but you told me to leave. So I came back later when you were gone. I wanted to see what kind of businessmen carry building plans and timing devices." One of the bodyguards moved closer, clearly ready to eliminate what he perceived as a security threat. But Rahman held up a hand to stop him. "Interesting," Rahman mused. "And what did you think when you saw those materials?" Sarah had prepared for this question, but her answer had to be perfect. "I thought you were finally going to make them pay. And I thought maybe I could help." Rahman studied her face carefully, looking for any sign of deception. Sarah forced herself to maintain eye contact while projecting the bitter determination of someone who truly wanted revenge against the system. Finally, Rahman smiled, a cold expression that didn't reach his eyes. "Perhaps we can find a use for your particular skills. But first, you will need to prove your commitment." Sarah's blood ran cold, but she kept her expression steady. "What kind of proof?" Rahman reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device about the size of a cell phone. "Tomorrow evening, there will be a private reception at the Justice Center for the attorneys involved in the terrorism trial. You will use your access to place this device in the main conference room." Sarah stared at the device, recognizing it as the type of explosive trigger she had seen in Rahman's briefcase. If she placed it and Rahman activated it, everyone in the conference room would be killed. "What happens after I place it?" she asked. "That is not your concern," Rahman replied. "Your job is simply to place the device and leave the building. After that, justice will be served." Sarah nodded slowly, as if accepting the weight of what she was being asked to do. "When do you need this done?" "The reception begins at 6 p.m. tomorrow. You will place the device no later than 5:30 p.m., then leave immediately." Rahman's eyes bored into hers. "If you betray us or fail to complete this task, we will find you. Do you understand?" Sarah met his gaze steadily. "I understand." Rahman stood to leave, but then paused. "One more thing. To ensure your continued cooperation, my associates will be watching you. Any attempt to contact law enforcement will result in immediate consequences. As the three terrorists left the diner, Sarah remained in her booth, staring at the explosive device Rahman had given her. She had successfully infiltrated the terrorist operation, but now she was carrying an actual bomb and being watched by people who wouldn't hesitate to kill her if they suspected her true identity. She activated the tiny communication device hidden in her cleaning supplies. Control, this is Phoenix. Package delivered successfully, but situation has become extremely critical. I repeat, extremely critical. The response came immediately. Phoenix, we have surveillance teams positioned around your location. Status report? Sarah spoke quietly into the device, describing the evening's events and the new timeline for the attack. As she spoke, she realized that Rahman's plan was even more sophisticated than they had initially understood. The morning terrorism trial had been a decoy. The real target was the private reception for attorneys, which would concentrate the legal teams working on multiple high-profile terrorism cases in a single, more vulnerable location. Control, they're targeting the attorney reception tomorrow evening. 6 p.m. at the Justice Center. I have an explosive device that I'm supposed to place by 5:30. Phoenix, we need to extract you immediately. This is too dangerous. But Sarah was already thinking ahead to the next phase. Negative, Control. If I disappear now, they'll know something's wrong and they'll activate their backup plan. I need to see this through. As she left the diner and drove back toward the city, Sarah knew she was walking a tightrope between success and disaster. One wrong move, one moment of suspicion from Rahman or his men, and both her life and the mission would be over. But she also knew that dozens of innocent lives depended on her ability to maintain her cover for just a little longer. The cleaning lady who had been invisible for so long was now at the center of preventing one of the most audacious terrorist attacks ever attempted on American soil. The countdown was now measured in hours, and Sarah Mitchell was the only person positioned to stop it from reaching zero. The FBI field office buzzed with urgent activity as Agent Sarah Mitchell sat in the debriefing room, her cleaning lady disguise now replaced by her standard tactical gear. The gray wig and padding had been carefully stored for potential future use, but her mind remained focused on the intelligence she had gathered just hours before. Special Agent in Charge Rebecca Hayes stood at the head of the conference table, studying the photographs Sarah had taken while a team of analysts worked frantically to translate the Arabic documents and decode the building schematics. The tension in the room was thick as everyone understood the implications of the countdown timer Sarah had discovered. The building plans matched the Federal Justice Center downtown, announced Agent Martinez from the Intelligence Division. Cross-referencing with the personnel photos Agent Mitchell captured, it looks like they're targeting the terrorism trial that starts Thursday morning. Sarah felt her stomach clench. The Federal Justice Center housed multiple courtrooms where high-profile terrorism cases were tried. If Rahman and his cell were planning an attack there, hundreds of innocent people could be at risk, including judges, lawyers, court staff, and civilians attending trials. The countdown gives us approximately 68 hours, Hayes said grimly. Martinez, what do we know about security at the Justice Center? Standard federal courthouse security. Metal detectors, armed guards, restricted access to certain floors. But, if these terrorists have been planning for months, they might have found ways around the standard protocols. Agent Torres, Sarah's handler from the surveillance operation, leaned forward. The listening device is still active in their hotel room. We're getting intermittent conversations, but they're being careful about what they discuss openly. Sarah studied the translated documents spread across the table. Look at these personnel schedules, she said, pointing to one of the photographs. These aren't just random court employees. These are specific people with access to secure areas: janitors, security guards, administrative staff. The implications were chilling. If the terrorists had been studying the Justice Center's personnel for months, they might have identified ways to infiltrate the building or compromise its security from within. Hayes turned to Agent Carter from the Tactical Division. How quickly can we increase security at the Justice Center without alerting the public or the defendants in ongoing trials? We can add plainclothes agents throughout the building within 12 hours, Carter replied. But, if we increase security too dramatically, it might tip off the terrorists that we're onto them. They could accelerate their timeline or choose a different target. Sarah had been thinking about Rahman's suspicious behavior when she was in his hotel room. I think they might already suspect they're being watched, she said. Rahman was more paranoid than necessary when I was cleaning. It's possible they have sources feeding them information about law enforcement activities. The room fell silent as the implications of that possibility sank in. If the terrorists had inside information about the investigation, it would complicate every aspect of the response plan. We need to consider the possibility of a leak, Hayes said carefully. Agent Mitchell, I want you to continue your hotel surveillance, but with modified parameters. If they suspect something, we need to know how much they know. Over the next few hours, the task force developed a multi-layered plan. Sarah would return to her cleaning lady role the following morning, but this time she would be equipped with more sophisticated surveillance equipment. Meanwhile, other agents would begin discreet investigation of Justice Center personnel to identify any potential security vulnerabilities. The listening device in room 1247 continued to provide fragments of conversation, but the terrorists were clearly being careful about operational details. They spoke mostly about mundane topics: food, weather, complaints about American television. But, occasionally, coded phrases would slip through that the intelligence analysts were working to decode. Sarah spent the evening studying detailed floor plans of the Justice Center, memorizing guard rotations, security camera positions, and emergency procedures. If the terrorists were planning to attack during the terrorism trial on Thursday, she needed to understand every aspect of the building's security systems. The trial they were likely targeting involved members of another terrorist cell that had been captured the previous year. The defendants were high-ranking operatives whose conviction would deal a significant blow to international terrorism networks. It made sense that Rahman's group would want to disrupt the proceedings, either to free their colleagues or to make a statement about American justice. The next morning, Sarah resumed her Maria Santos identity and returned to the Grandview Hotel. The transformation process had become routine, but she approached it with even more care than before. If Rahman was suspicious of hotel staff, she needed to be absolutely perfect in her disguise and behavior. The hotel's morning shift was just beginning as Sarah pushed her cleaning cart through the service entrance. She checked in with the housekeeping supervisor, a friendly woman named Janet who had accepted Sarah's cover story without question. "Maria, I'm glad you're here early today," Janet said. "We've got some VIP guests checking out on the 12th floor, and they've requested extra attention to detail." Sarah's pulse quickened. The 12th floor was where Rahman's room was located. "Of course, Janet. I'll take care of everything." As Sarah made her way to the 12th floor, she activated the small communication device hidden in her cleaning supplies. "Control, this is Phoenix. Beginning second day of surveillance. Target floor has VIP checkout requests. Copy, Phoenix. We're monitoring the listening device, but activity has been minimal since yesterday. Be extra cautious." Sarah began her cleaning routine on the opposite end of the hall from room 1247, working her way methodically toward the terrorists' location. She wanted to observe their behavior patterns and see if she could detect any changes in their security procedures. As she cleaned room 1230, she heard voices in the hallway. Through her cart mirror, she watched as one of Rahman's bodyguards emerged from room 1247 and walked toward the elevators. He was carrying the same briefcase as yesterday, but his movements seemed more tense and alert. Sarah continued her work, but she kept track of the time. The bodyguard was gone for exactly 47 minutes. When he returned, he was accompanied by a new person, a woman in an expensive business suit who looked like she could be a hotel executive or corporate consultant. The woman's presence immediately raised Sarah's concern. The terrorists had been careful to limit their contact with outsiders, so this meeting must be significant. Sarah activated her hidden camera and managed to capture several photographs as the woman entered room 1247. "Control, this is Phoenix. New contact has arrived at target location. Adult female, approximately 40 years old, professional dress, unknown identity." "Copy that, Phoenix. We're running facial recognition on the photos you're transmitting. Sarah positioned herself in a room directly across from 1247, where she could monitor the hallway while maintaining her cleaning cover. The meeting inside Ramon's room lasted nearly 2 hours, and Sarah could occasionally hear raised voices through the door. When the woman finally emerged, Sarah was ready. She managed to photograph the woman from multiple angles as she walked toward the elevators. But, as the elevator doors closed, Sarah noticed something that made her blood run cold. The woman was wearing a Justice Center employee identification badge. Sarah immediately activated her communication device. "Control, this is urgent. The new contact is wearing Justice Center credentials. Repeat, we have a potential inside connection at the target location." The response was immediate and tense. "Phoenix, we need positive identification on that individual immediately. This changes everything." Sarah knew she had to take a risk. She abandoned her cleaning cart and headed for the stairwell, hoping to reach the lobby before the woman left the hotel. If they could identify this person, it might reveal how deep the terrorist infiltration went. Sarah reached the lobby just as the woman was walking toward the front entrance. She followed at a discreet distance, using the skills she had learned in surveillance training to remain unnoticed while staying close enough to observe. The woman walked 3 blocks to a parking garage, where she got into a dark sedan with government plates. Sarah memorized the license number and took photographs with her hidden camera, but she couldn't follow without risking exposure. "Control, target is mobile in government vehicle, license number Delta Charlie 7792. Running facial recognition and vehicle registration check." While waiting for the analysis results, Sarah returned to the hotel to continue her surveillance. But, as she entered the service elevator, she noticed one of Ramon's bodyguards in the lobby, watching the elevator area carefully. Sarah forced herself to remain calm and maintain her tired cleaning lady expression, but her mind was racing. If the terrorists were now posting security in the lobby, they might have realized that someone was watching them. She returned to the 12th floor and resumed her cleaning routine, but everything felt different now. The hallway that had seemed routine and safe yesterday now felt charged with tension and potential danger. As she worked, Sarah's earpiece crackled with an urgent message from Agent Hayes. "Phoenix, facial recognition has identified the woman as Susan Chen, Assistant Director of Security at the Federal Justice Center. She has access to all building security systems and personnel files." The revelation hit Sarah like a physical blow. The terrorists hadn't just been studying the Justice Center from the outside, they had someone on the inside with access to the most sensitive security information. "Control, what's Chen's background? How long has she been in position?" "Running a complete background check now, but preliminary shows she's been with Justice Center security for 8 years. Clean record, high security clearance." Sarah continued cleaning, but her mind was analyzing the implications. If Chen was working with the terrorists voluntarily, it represented a massive security breach that went far beyond a simple building attack. If she was being coerced or blackmailed, the situation was equally dangerous but might offer different tactical options. The listening device in room 1247 had been quiet all morning, but suddenly, Sarah heard movement and voices. Ramon was speaking in rapid Arabic to his companions. Even without understanding the words, Sarah could tell from the tone that something urgent was happening. "Control, increased activity in target room. They sound agitated about something. Copy that, Phoenix. Our Arabic translator is monitoring, but they're speaking too quickly and using dialect variations that are difficult to decode in real time." Sarah positioned herself where she could watch the door to room 1247 while appearing to clean nearby rooms. After 20 minutes, all 3 terrorists emerged, moving with obvious urgency. Ramon was carrying a laptop computer, while the bodyguards had their briefcase and several large bags. "Control, all targets are mobile with equipment. This looks like they're checking out. Phoenix, we need to know where they're going, but maintain your cover. We can't lose your access to their activities." Sarah watched as the terrorists headed toward the elevators, but, instead of going to the lobby, they pressed the button for the basement level. That was unusual. Hotel guests typically didn't have access to the basement parking garage. Sarah quickly made her way to the service stairs and descended to the basement level. The area was dimly lit and filled with hotel maintenance equipment and storage areas. She could hear voices echoing from the parking area but couldn't see the terrorists directly. Moving carefully through the shadows, Sarah positioned herself where she could observe without being detected. Rahman and his men were loading their equipment into a dark SUV with tinted windows. But they weren't alone. Susan Chen was there, along with two other people Sarah didn't recognize. Sarah activated her camera and began photographing the meeting, but the lighting was poor and she couldn't get clear images of everyone involved. What she could see was Rahman handing Chen what appeared to be electronic devices, possibly the detonators she had seen in his room. The meeting lasted only a few minutes, but the implications were staggering. Chen wasn't just providing information, she was actively participating in the terrorist operation by accepting what were almost certainly explosive devices. Control, this is Phoenix with critical intelligence. Chen is not just an informant, she's an active participant. She just received what appear to be explosive devices from Rahman. The response was immediate and urgent. Phoenix, we need to activate arrest teams immediately. This has moved beyond intelligence gathering to active prevention. But, as Sarah prepared to leave her observation position, she heard footsteps approaching her location. One of Rahman's bodyguards was walking directly toward her hiding place, his hand resting on what was clearly a concealed weapon. Sarah had seconds to decide, maintain her cover and risk being discovered by an armed terrorist, or abandon her position and potentially lose crucial intelligence about the final phases of the attack plan. The footsteps were getting closer, and Sarah could see the bodyguard's shadow approaching around the corner of the maintenance equipment. Her cleaning lady disguise would be impossible to explain in the basement parking area, and if the terrorists suspected her true identity, both her life and the mission would be in immediate danger. Sarah made her choice. She slipped deeper into the shadows behind a large electrical panel, hoping the poor lighting would conceal her presence. The bodyguard rounded the corner and stood less than 10 feet away, scanning the area carefully. For 30 seconds that felt like an eternity, Sarah remained perfectly still while the armed terrorist searched the area around her hiding place. She could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears, but years of training helped her control her breathing and remain motionless. Finally, the bodyguard turned and walked back toward the SUV. Sarah heard car doors slamming and engines starting, followed by the sound of vehicles leaving the parking garage. Control, targets are mobile and have left the hotel. Chen and at least two unidentified individuals were part of the meeting. They now have explosive devices. Phoenix, excellent work, but your position may be compromised. Extract immediately and return to base. As Sarah made her way back through the hotel toward the exit, her mind was already turning to the next phase of the operation. The terrorists had left the hotel, which meant they were probably moving to their final staging area before the attack. With less than 50 hours remaining on the countdown timer and explosives now in the hands of someone with complete access to the Justice Center's security systems, the situation had become critical. Law enforcement would need to move quickly to prevent what could become one of the most devastating terrorist attacks on American soil. But Sarah also knew that her role in the mission was far from over. The intelligence she had gathered would be crucial in planning the final response, and her unique understanding of the terrorists' behavior patterns might be the key to stopping them before they could strike. The cleaning lady cover had provided unprecedented access to the terrorist operation, but now it was time for Agent Sarah Mitchell to step back into her true role as a counter-terrorism operative. The next phase would require different skills and different risks, but the stakes remained the same: stopping Rahman and his cell before they could turn their countdown timer to zero. Maria Santos pushed her cleaning cart down the marble hallway of the Grandview International Hotel, her worn sneakers squeaking softly against the polished floor. The early morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the expensive artwork that lined the walls. To anyone watching, she appeared to be just another invisible member of the housekeeping staff, someone whose presence was so commonplace that guests barely noticed her existence. But Maria Santos was not who she appeared to be. Hidden beneath her simple blue uniform and tired expression was one of the most skilled counter-terrorism agents in the world. Her real name was Agent Sarah Mitchell, and she had spent the last 3 months preparing for this moment. The intelligence had come through CIA channels 6 weeks ago. A terrorist cell known as the Red Crescent had been planning something big, something that would shake the foundations of international security. Their leader, a man called Khalil Rahman, had been spotted entering the United States under a false passport. The FBI had tracked him to this very hotel, where he was meeting with other cell members to finalize their plans. Sarah adjusted the small earpiece hidden beneath her gray hair wig as she moved her cart closer to room 1247. The device crackled softly with the voice of her handler, Agent David Torres, who was monitoring the situation from a surveillance van parked 3 blocks away. "Phoenix, this is Control. Target has been in the room for 20 minutes. We're picking up multiple voices through the audio surveillance. Looks like the whole team is there." Sarah pressed a small button hidden in her cleaning supplies to respond. "Copy that, Control. Beginning approach now." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Sarah would use her cleaning lady cover to plant listening devices in the hotel room while the terrorists were out. The devices would capture their conversations, revealing the details of their planned attack. Then, law enforcement could move in and stop them before innocent people got hurt. Sarah had been chosen for this mission because of her unique background. Before joining the CIA, she had actually worked as a hotel housekeeper for 2 years while putting herself through college. She knew the routines, the schedules, and, most importantly, how to move through a hotel without attracting attention. Her supervisors had recognized this skill and recruited her for undercover work. The transformation had been remarkable. Sarah's natural brown hair was hidden under a convincing gray wig that made her look 20 years older. Makeup artists had added wrinkles around her eyes and mouth, and she wore padding that changed her body shape completely. She had practiced the slightly hunched posture and slow movements of an older woman until they became second nature. As she approached room 1247, Sarah could hear muffled voices from inside. Her heart rate increased slightly, but her breathing remained steady. Years of training had taught her to control her body's natural responses to stress and danger. She knocked gently on the door using the standard housekeeping pattern, 3 soft taps followed by the words, "Housekeeping, may I clean your room?" The voices inside stopped immediately. Sarah waited, maintaining her patient, slightly bored expression that she had seen on the faces of real cleaning staff countless times. After a moment, footsteps approached the door. "We do not need cleaning today," came a heavily accented voice from the other side. "I understand, sir," Sarah replied in the tired tone she had perfected. "Hotel policy says I have to ask every day. Would tomorrow morning be better? No cleaning. Leave us alone." Sarah made a mark on the fake cleaning schedule attached to her cart. "Very well, sir. I'll make a note. Have a good day." She began to move away from the door, but not before pressing a tiny listening device against the doorframe. The device was no bigger than a pencil eraser and would be nearly invisible to anyone who wasn't specifically looking for it. As she moved down the hallway, the voices inside the room resumed. Sarah's earpiece crackled again. "Phoenix, the device is working perfectly. We're getting clear audio. Good work." Sarah continued her cleaning routine on the floor, working methodically from room to room. She had to maintain her cover completely, which meant actually cleaning bathrooms, making beds, and emptying trash cans. The work was physically demanding, but it provided the perfect opportunity to observe the hotel's security procedures and guest patterns. Around noon, Sarah was cleaning a room 2 doors down from the terrorists when she heard the door to 1247 open. Through her small cleaning cart mirror, she watched as 3 men emerged. They were dressed in business casual clothes and could have been any group of international travelers. The man in the middle matched the photograph she had memorized of Khalil Rahman. He was shorter than she had expected, with graying hair and wire-rimmed glasses that made him look more like a college professor than a terrorist leader. His 2 companions were younger and more muscular, clearly serving as bodyguards. Sarah kept her head down as they passed, but she was memorizing every detail. Rahman walked with a slight limp, favoring his left leg. One of the bodyguards had a small scar above his right eyebrow. The other carried a briefcase that he never let out of his sight. "Control, this is Phoenix. targets are mobile. 3 males heading toward the elevators. Copy that, Phoenix. We have eyes on them from street surveillance. Continue your mission. After the men disappeared into the elevator, Sarah quickly moved to room 1247. She had perhaps 15 minutes before they might return. Using a special electronic lockpick disguised as a cleaning spray bottle, she opened the door and slipped inside. The room was a standard business suite, but it had been transformed into a command center. Laptops sat open on the desk and dining table, their screens showing maps, building schematics, and what appeared to be security camera layouts. Papers covered in Arabic writing were scattered across the bed. Sarah activated a small camera hidden in her cleaning supplies and began photographing everything. The documents would be analyzed later by intelligence specialists who could translate the Arabic text and interpret the technical diagrams. One laptop screen caught her attention immediately. It showed a detailed floor plan of what looked like a government building. Red marks indicated entry and exit points, while blue circles marked what were probably security camera positions. In the corner of the screen, she could see part of a digital clock counting down. It read 72 hours 14 minutes and 33 seconds, and the numbers were decreasing. Whatever the terrorists were planning, it was going to happen in just over 3 days. Sarah photographed the screen from multiple angles, making sure to capture all the details. As she worked, she listened carefully for any sounds that might indicate the men were returning. The hallway remained quiet except for the distant sound of other hotel guests coming and going. She moved to the papers on the bed, photographing each one carefully. Some appeared to be building blueprints, while others looked like personnel schedules or security protocols. One document showed what appeared to be a list of names with photos attached. Sarah recognized some of the faces as high-ranking government officials. The briefcase that one of the bodyguards had been carrying sat open on the dresser. Inside, Sarah could see what looked like electronic devices, small black boxes with LED displays and trailing wires. Her blood ran cold as she recognized them. They were detonators, designed to trigger explosive devices remotely. Sarah photographed the briefcase contents, but she didn't dare touch anything. Moving or disturbing the devices could trigger security measures or alert the terrorists that someone had been in their room. Her earpiece crackled urgently. Phoenix, targets are returning to the hotel. You have approximately 3 minutes. Sarah's pulse quickened, but her movements remained calm and methodical. She quickly finished photographing the remaining documents, then moved toward the bathroom to stage her cleaning activities. She needed a believable reason for being in the room if the terrorists returned unexpectedly. She had just begun spraying cleaning solution on the bathroom mirror when she heard voices in the hallway outside. The voices were getting closer, and she could make out Rahman's distinctive accent. Sarah grabbed her cleaning supplies and moved toward the door, planning to exit as the men approached. But, as she reached for the door handle, she heard the electronic beep of a keycard being used. They were already at the door. Sarah's mind raced through her options. The bathroom was too small to hide in effectively, and the closet was full of the terrorists' belongings. She could try to bluff her way out, claiming she was responding to a maintenance request, but that would be risky if they became suspicious. Instead, Sarah made a split-second decision that drew on her years of observing real hotel staff. She grabbed a towel from her cart and moved to the window, beginning to clean the glass with slow, methodical movements. Her back was to the door when it opened. What is this? Rahman's voice was sharp with suspicion. Sarah turned slowly, maintaining the tired expression of a worker who had been interrupted in her routine. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. The front desk said there was a problem with the air conditioning vent. I was checking the windows to see if they were sealed properly. Rahman studied her carefully, his eyes narrow with suspicion. One of the bodyguards moved closer, his hand resting near what was obviously a concealed weapon. I told you this morning we did not want cleaning, Rahman said. Sarah nodded apologetically. Yes, sir, I remember. This isn't cleaning, it's maintenance. The hotel manager sent me to check all the rooms on this floor. Something about the heating system not working properly. She gestured toward the window with her cleaning cloth. "I can come back later if you prefer, but the manager said it was urgent. Guests have been complaining about the temperature." Roman exchanged glances with his companions. Sarah could see them weighing their options. They clearly didn't want hotel staff in their room, but they also couldn't afford to draw attention to themselves by being difficult. After a long moment, Roman nodded curtly. "Make it quick." Sarah spent another 2 minutes cleaning the window and adjusting the curtains, all while fighting to keep her heart rate under control. She was acutely aware of the 3 men watching her every movement, looking for any sign that she was more than she appeared to be. Finally, she gathered her supplies and headed for the door. "All finished, sir. Thank you for your patience." As she stepped into the hallway, she heard Roman speaking rapidly in Arabic to his companions. Sarah didn't understand the words, but the tone was clearly agitated. She forced herself to maintain her slow, unhurried pace as she pushed her cart down the hallway. Only when she reached the service elevator did she allow herself a small sigh of relief. "Control, this is Phoenix. Package delivered successfully. Multiple items of intelligence gathered. Targets appear to be planning something major within the next 72 hours. Outstanding work, Phoenix. Return to base for debriefing. We need to analyze this information immediately." As the elevator carried her down to the service level, Sarah reflected on what she had learned. The terrorists were clearly planning a major attack on a government building, possibly targeting high-ranking officials. The countdown timer suggested they were working on a strict schedule, which meant law enforcement would have limited time to stop them. But something bothered her about Roman's reaction to her presence in the room. His suspicion had seemed deeper than normal caution. It was possible that the terrorist leader was more paranoid than most, but Sarah's instincts told her there might be more to it. She had been trained to trust her instincts, even when she couldn't immediately explain them. Years of undercover work had taught her that small details often reveal larger truths. Roman's behavior suggested that he might be expecting some kind of surveillance or interference. That possibility raised uncomfortable questions. If the terrorists suspected they were being watched, it could mean they had inside information about the investigation. Someone might have leaked details about the operation, or they might have discovered the surveillance through their own intelligence networks. Sarah made her way through the hotel's service corridors, still maintaining her cleaning lady persona in case any hotel staff or security cameras were observing her. She had learned long ago that the most dangerous moment in any undercover operation was often the transition period when an agent was moving from their cover identity back to their real role. The service area was busy with the usual afternoon activities. Real housekeepers were restocking their carts, maintenance workers were moving equipment, and food service staff were preparing for the dinner rush. Sarah blended seamlessly into the controlled chaos, just another uniformed employee going about her daily tasks. Her car was parked in the employees section of the hotel's underground garage. As she walked toward it, Sarah mentally reviewed everything she had observed and photographed. The intelligence would be crucial in planning the law enforcement response, but timing would be critical. If they moved too quickly, the terrorists might escape or accelerate their timeline. If they waited too long, innocent people could die. Sarah reached her car and began loading her cleaning supplies into the trunk. To anyone watching, she was simply a hotel employee finishing her shift and heading home. But, hidden among the cleaning bottles and towels were some of the most important pieces of intelligence gathered in recent counter-terrorism operations. As she drove out of the garage, Sarah's mind was already turning to the next phase of the mission. The information she had gathered would need to be analyzed, translated, and cross-referenced with other intelligence databases. Then, tactical teams would need to be briefed and positioned for the capture operation. But first, she needed to get safely away from the hotel and back to the FBI field office. The most challenging part of her mission was complete, but Sarah knew from experience that the most dangerous moments often came when success seemed certain. The afternoon traffic was heavy, which provided good cover for any surveillance detection maneuvers she might need to perform. Sarah took a circuitous route through the city, checking her mirrors regularly and making random turns to ensure she wasn't being followed. As she drove, she reflected on the morning's events. The mission had been successful beyond expectations. Not only had she planted the listening device and gathered photographic intelligence, but she had also gotten close enough to the terrorists to observe their behavior patterns and security procedures. The countdown timer bothered her most. 72 hours wasn't much time to organize a response, especially if the target was a well-protected government building. But at least now they knew approximately when the attack was planned, which would allow law enforcement to increase security and position response teams. Sarah pulled into the parking garage of a downtown office building that served as a front for the FBI field office. Her transformation back to Agent Sarah Mitchell would begin as soon as she reached the secure floors, but, for now, she remained Maria Santos, invisible cleaning lady with secrets that could save lives.